Good evening. I hit the wrong one. Oh well. Don't have Rob with us tonight, but not yet anyway. He might be by here soon. I think he went to get some food. We do have Script Doctor and myself. How you doing, Script?
I'm doing great. How are you, sir?
Hanging in there, doing the best I can. We were just talking about Star Trek Discovery, so we had a little Star Trek recovery session, and I kind of feel dirty for what we did to Mr. H, but I'll get over it.
He's got the strength of will to get past that, but his reactions kind of solidified our expectations of what your average audience member might get from seeing Star Trek Discovery.
Right. And then Sister Harrow sent in Australian $5 already. Thank you so much. Leto as Joker. That'll be a no from me. Stop sign. Hands up. Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a moment. Other than that, there was a few things to talk about here. I'm hoping a few people will come in before we get into the news too much. But was anything on your plate lately that you're working on, Script? I'm sure you're working on another Discovery review, but other than that,
Yeah, I'm working on another Discovery review. My schedule's kind of opening up a little bit, so I'm really hoping that gets me into a routine where I can get back into the swing of finishing off the Batwoman series reviews, because I've got them all written and I have most of them recorded. I just haven't edited them yet, so I got to get on that. And also prepping for Mandalorian season 2, which I think is a couple of weeks away, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll be covering that. Hopefully they've improved on the issues I had with it previous season. So that's all in the works right now.
all right. Well, and here's Rob. There he is. I was wondering if you're going to show up.
Yeah, well, yeah, I tried, but I got moved in time about a year forward. So I mean, just like the crew, the STV.
So what's it like in the
We've
future?
been looking for you for so long. It's been a year.
Please tell
Rob.
me. Yeah, please tell me this shit's over with by next year.
No, well, let me just close my porn so nothing goes out here. All right. No, it's boy, pardon, pardon. Yeah, after thinking on it for about an hour, it still hasn't gotten any better. Just as ridiculous. But I can't even yell and scream anymore because they've beaten it out of me. It's just I'm at a state where that's where we are now. The Star Trek fandom is in a state of apathy. We just don't care anymore. We really don't, and that's sad because this is something I've loved for 50 odd years. For as long as I've been alive, I've loved Star Trek, and that's the biggest crime. Well. Easy. Well, at least I always say at least the Beatles had good sense to break up when they did. Thank you.
You know what I found out today that pissed me off?
What did you find out?
You know that John Lennon box that I was telling you about?
Yeah.
That was originally only going to be available in record stores.
Yeah.
And then they allowed you to order it offline, which I did. I ordered it off their website.
Uh-huh.
And then I saw it on Amazon today for like $30 cheaper.
Oh, for God's
and then
sake.
some with like probably the shipping and shit. Like, fuck you, Yoko. You know she got most of the money, right?
Oh yeah, and she's probably still digging around the Dakota looking for anything he might have scribbled on.
You need one of those with Yoko too.
Yeah. I need that.
And then you just have her going, wah! You know what's sad? I found out, speaking of Yoko, you know the song Rock Lobster by the B-52s?
What?
You know that song, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Rock Lobster.
Yeah, you know the one part where the one chick's going all like, ah, and crap in the background? That was, that was homage to Yoko. But it's sad that she did it so much better.
Yeah. Worked for that song, didn't work for anything else.
Well, you got to remember where they were at that era. I mean, that was like the end of the 70s, and she was like this, person in the movement at the time. But speaking of a movement, like a ball movement, according to Vanity... Fuck off. Go away. According to... Get the fuck off the screen. Jared Leto will be returning for the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Now, I guess we reported this already, but I don't remember reporting this already.
I thought they were going to use some of the footage that he had. Yeah.
I have no idea. That was like another thing was like a few people are pointing out like, wait a minute. This keeps sounding more and more like they're doing different things than what was supposed to be. Like you just pointed out, script. Like, why would they need him to be coming back if the footage should already technically exist? I think is basically what you're saying.
Well, the budget has increased. I think they're projected to between 70 and 80 million on the reshoot.
Yeah, we know they're reshooting shit.
Or the stuff we've already heard up rumors and do for that this thing.
Yeah, we already heard
pretty
rumors,
much like they're making a brand new movie.
Yeah, we already heard rumors that of course everybody's coming back. So like we're not surprised. But this is like besides like hearing of Ezra Miller still being in the movie, this is like my least fucking great kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, what are they going to do with him in the Snyder Cut? I'm curious, but like, does Jared Leto know he's coming back? Because he's been working out, I think, for Tron Ares, which is the rumored.
He already bought a bunch of condoms and dead animals, so I think he's getting ready. I don't know. I'm making shit. Oh boy, help me out here, Rob. Well, and you know a little bit about him, don't you? Vicariously, the whole situation with your experience on.
Yeah, he has mailed film. Some people some stuff. I was witness to. I didn't get to see the contents of the bag. I was told of the bag, and I saw the bag. And luckily, we had gotten warnings beforehand that this was happening. So they got rid of it pretty quick. But Jared Leto likes to go a little too far on his method. Yeah. I never met him, but I met his stunt double.
Oh, okay. Jared Leto will get his toys out of storage once more. Or the Oscar-winning actor will reprise his role as Joker for Zack Snyder's upcoming revamp of Justice League, informally known as the Snyder Cut. The Hollywood Reporter broke the news Wednesday, but provided no further context about how Leto's take on the famed Batman villain will fit into the Snyder's HBO Max project. A source told Vanity Fair, however, that Leto is set to play a previously unseen version of the Joker in the event series. Really? That's very interesting. That would jibe with fan speculation about the revised Justice League, which is expected to include an extended Nightmare alternate reality sequence first revealed in Snyder's Batman v Superman Dawn of Just Toast. In August, Eagle Eye fans spotted the Joker's famed calling card floating through the Nightmare reality in a teaser for Justice League. DC has leaned into the idea of multiverse realities recently, casting Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck to play different versions of Batman in the forthcoming...
It's funny you should mention that. Or, well, they should mention that, Rob.
We mentioned toast? I love toast.
No, not the toast part, because if you're smelling toast, then you need to go to the doctor. No, I'm talking about Michael Keaton, because he had just said on a talk show that, the whole Batman thing's not set in stone yet.
Oh.
Was that recently?
Last night, I believe.
Oh, wow. That is recent, yeah.
That is very interesting.
Continue.
Do I have to?
No, I think we got the gist.
We worked together for 6 months. Leto did not appear at the theatrical version of Justice League. He previously played Joker in David Ayer's violent 2016 features Suicide Squad. During that film's production, he rather famously dove headfirst into playing the Joker. Will Smith said Leto had undergone such a method transformation, in fact, that Smith had never really met his lauded co-star. We worked together for 6 months, and we never really exchanged word outside of action and cut. That is a terrible Will Smith.
That was a very terrible Will Smith.
I don't know who that was.
Read Will. Maybe you should read Will Smith as Eddie Murphy. I love that. Is it wrong that when someone said they were in Beverly Hills that I responded with a GIF of Axel Foley?
Are you sure you weren't responding to the one that Jeff just wrote where he's like, I'm driving through Beverly Hills listening to Axel F?
Yeah, I didn't want to say outright. I didn't know how private that information was, but okay.
I almost got to meet Harold Faltermeyer like 2 weeks ago, but he couldn't get his shit figured out for Zoom or whatever it was.
Are you? You really think we're gonna fall off a banana at the tailpipe?
You shouldn't say it like that. Don't come out so natural. It'd be like, hey man, I ain't gonna fall for the banana and tailpipe. So that sounds so much more natural for us. We've been hanging out with this dude too long.
What's the story on that? That was written for Sylvester Stallone?
Oh yeah, you don't know that story? Oh, that's a very interesting one.
I know that story, but I mean,
actually, Mickey Rourke was actually the original Beverly Hills Cop star. And I'm trying to remember what happened between him and whoever, but then there was a falling out somewhere, and he left the project, and then Stallone got involved, and Stallone just wanted to change everything. He basically wanted to change Axel's name to Axel Colbretti so he could be the Motor City Cobra. Ginny Summers was the love interest in that version. It was more action oriented. And basically when they got to a point when they realized it just wasn't going to work and getting so far from the mothership, they parted ways, but they let Stallone take whatever he had come up with and use it for Cobra.
Really?
Yep. And then they went back to more of the original script, brought Eddie in. Eddie came in with his people, punched it up a little bit or whatever for Eddie. And a lot of that's improvising for Eddie. I mean,
yeah. He almost believed the story I told you about Super Cop.
Super Cops. You had to go and fuck up. Perfectly good lie, but that's how interested we are in Jared Leto's Joker, folks. We're talking about Eddie Murphy.
35 girl film that you should all be watching.
Still a great film.
Yeah.
Oh,
fantastic film.
Well, who wants to have some fun with Gail Simone?
What?
I think I should have phrased that differently, but it actually kind of fitting for what she's writing here. Gail Simone's a moron, folks. Newsflash.
Huh.
She decided to go out on Twitter and said, no one gets any in Star Wars. None. More people get laid in The Flying Nun than Star Wars. I guess she forgot Luke and Leia.
Han and Leia.
Kylo Ben. Pretty much everybody has to be born at some point, you know.
Anakin and Padme.
That's what I just said, the twins, yeah.
Yeah.
But not only that, why is everybody so, if this is the case, then why is all of her ilk so fucking obsessed, as I say here, with everybody's preferences and what is between their legs? Really?
How's her YouTube channel going?
It's not
probably about as good as Breeze.
She hasn't made a video in 6 months. Let me see. It's
Willie, I do. However, before we start, let me get really drunk first. Taking one for the team, eh, Willie? No, Ronan, I meant their birth. The fact that they were born meant that Anakin and Padme had to bump uglies. Yeah. Oh, shit. Alex, like, imagine how Star Trek 4 would have been had Eddie Murphy been in it. Hey, you're Captain Kirk, man. I know you. Where's Spock?
Yeah. She has.
Let me teach you how to swear.
Yeah.
Tammy, what's it like
Gail
to
Simone
fuck a
has
green
1,700
bitch?
subscribers, and she has the most views she has is 12,000. That's on the welcome video.
Did you cut out, Rob, or did I?
Travel
No, you're
media
still
and nerd.
here.
Okay, so everybody just went quiet like a bunch of
No, you
Oh,
idiots.
okay.
For fuck's sake, am I really going to have to give us a lazy puppy?
Travel and-
Like a real lazy puppy, guys?
That's such a cute
Yes,
puppy.
we will.
And like Teresa says here, everybody was banging in Star Wars.
Yeah, Lando was even trying to get some.
She doesn't have room for scoundrels in her life script. Leia, you know, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
you need a scoundrel. And I'm going to put my scoundrel in you. And then you're going to have a baby. And he's going to kill me.
A very pathetic baby.
If anybody,
For some sort of evil character, he doesn't really
I
win
always,
anything.
I would say right or wrong. I always say
I think Rob's on a delay.
Maybe because
I
he
think
said
so.
right or wrong, I'm going to say and then nothing.
well, maybe.
Maybe try refreshing real quick. Lazy puppy is Star Wars.
I think my
Someone throw some X-Wing and TIE Fighter sounds on that lazy puppy video.
Yeah, you're cutting in out majorly, and like you're stopping like way after we're talking and shit. So, what's funny is I think I used the Star Wars font on here. Oh no, I used the Back to the Future font. Never mind. Never mind. Marty, never mind. Yeah, my fucking Back to the Future box set finally shipped out today. Jesus.
Oh, nice.
It took everything I could not to buy it at Walmart. I'm like, nope, you got it coming in the mail. Just let it be. Because I got the one with the floating hoverboard coming.
Oh, that's cool. I don't have that one. I just have the normal re-release stuff, Blu-ray with 4K.
Yeah. And then I went and bought, I already ordered some black 4K cases because I had to make cases. I'm going to have to make cases for them. I cannot stand them in those little fucking foldy book things.
Yeah.
I did for the old ones, the old last box set for Back to the Future that came out like 5 years ago. I did the same thing. I made cases for them. I can't stand that shit. I did it for Jurassic Park. I'm going to do it for the Hitchcock box set. Yeah, I don't normally make my own cases, but in those rare occasions where they put them in really stupidly, I do. I had to call Universal and get a hold of them to get a replacement for my first original Back to the Future Blu-ray. Because the first set that came out, I don't know if you remember or how they were up in Canada, but down here they had them in these really shitty fucking, like they weren't even held in by anything but like this. You squeezed them in the plastic.
Yep,
and they
I
were
remember
like
that.
stacked on top of you. And like it was so bad that it scratched my Back to the Future disc. And I only watched it once, and I wrote them. I'm like, dude, this fucker doesn't work. And they end up calling me, and I'm like, yeah, it does not play. It skips. And it's like, well, you. I'm like, yeah, well, it's because of your fucking packaging. And they actually sent me a new one.
That's awesome. I remember there being a transfer issue with that very first set.
Yeah, there was. And I don't know if I got one of the transfer ones issue problems or not. I think I did. But and then I ended up getting the new box set anyway, so that didn't matter. They fixed it on that one.
Oh man, Back to the Future. That's such a great franchise, and I'm so happy that Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis have gone publicly multiple times saying they're not going to remake it, reboot it, add a sequel. They respect those films too much to play around with them. So
I actually had
integrity.
a video store at one time, Fragoff. I don't know if the world's ready for me to have a video store again. Me having a video store is like Randall having a video store. It just
I don't watch movies.
I don't watch movies. No, I do actually. I watch too many movies. When I had a video store, I watched everything. When
I have
I
a
worked
whole
in the
wall
video
full of
store,
Navy
I did
SEALs.
too. Yeah. Ooh, Navy SEALs. Do you guys have any new movies? Yeah, I got the animated series with that last box set. And no, I think the answer to that is no. I think the answer is no, and I don't think we need a confirmation on that. I think we can safely say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think either sex would be into that at all. I think we lost Rob completely.
Maybe he updated his browser, and
I have no idea.
that's always a bad idea, especially if you're on like the Chrome or Microsoft
Or
Edge.
maybe that's why he was coming in like shit as he had like an update trying to go through or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, it's been a weird week.
Was there
Weird
anything
week.
else in the news that you can recall that we haven't talked about yet? I know it's been a couple days.
I think they announced Brian Edward Hill is writing a Power Rangers film, and it's being directed by what's his name, Jonathan Entwistle.
There's Rob.
That's all I can remember.
The guy from the Who?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Bounding's already got that article up. Michael Keaton says his deal to play Batman in the Flash is still in negotiation. But we do have a look at Tom Holland in as Nathan Drake. If you guys want to see that real quick.
Uncharted, yeah.
Oh yeah.
My sound level got bumped down to 71. How did that happen?
Yeah, I was to say you do sound a little low.
All right, how's that? Any better?
Oh yeah, way
Oh
better.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, there's Nathan Drake. All right.
Okay.
He needs a 5 o'clock shadow.
He needs a couple pounds on him. He needs a few sandwiches.
I think so.
Yeah, the costume's all right. His hair's okay. Just he still looks like he's 24.
I have no investment whatsoever. So there is this other story here. Let me get you the link, Rob. We can cover this real quickity. Da-da-boom.
Lord. Oh God, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon.
You need to get a
Lozenge.
something.
Yeah.
Lady Thor! Well, it hurts. Lady bits. So it's Lady Thor.
Thor: Love and Thunder actress Natalie Portman confirms key part of film story. Thor: Love and Thunder, worst heavy metal album title ever. Actor Natalie Portman recently confirmed key part of the film story. Speaking with Yahoo Life, Natalie Portman spilled the beans about the upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe film, Thor: Love and Thunder, saying, "I'm trying to think. It's based on the graphic novel of the mighty Thor. She's going through cancer treatment and is a superhero on the side." Isn't anybody a superhero? That's nobody's day job anymore?
I think she already kind of confirmed this, or they already kind of confirmed this part of the story. Because in that, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. The band is all here almost, except for Andre. How you doing?
I clicked on your link. I was like, hey, how's it going?
Fantastic.
Oh, we were just talking about Thor: Love and Thunder.
I was just talking about you guys on my stream.
Were you? What were you talking about?
That's
That's infinitely more interesting than this crap.
I was talking about how the fact that people always say to me, first of all, I talk about how I used to watch Midnight's Edge before I knew you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I love Rob's narration.
Now you are the Midnight's Edge.
And a guy told you guys know this, but because people are always, they quantify you guys as Fandom Menace channels. And I was defending the Fandom Menace, even though I'm not a part of the Fandom Menace. And I said, I'm always afforded more respect and more by you guys than say people that would be on, I guess, my side of whatever that is, whatever that means. And I was explaining that's why I like to go on people's channels, other people's channels, is because I'm usually treated respectfully, which is not always the same from even my own people I work with.
How can we not treat you with respect? You're Robert Meyer Burnett.
I'm noticing your t-shirt. The Duke of Dope Discourse, the master of fun.
This is how important you are in the Fandom Menace.
A viewer made this for me.
This is how important you are at least in the not just the Phantom Menace, but in our circle anyway. Do you know who Steve Kenobi? You've been on at least one show with Steve Kenobi, but I don't know if you know of Steve Kenobi besides just that, like 1 or 2 times you've ran into him.
No.
Okay, he is somebody who gives 2 shits about the YouTube thing. It's not his bag. He doesn't care, and he had no clue who you were at first that night when you were on, and he almost felt bad that he didn't know afterwards when he found out who you were. Like, and he has no care for any of this shit, right? Like he was, and he's not even really a Star Trek fan. He was just like that impressiveness that you just come in and hung out and talk to us and all that kind of stuff. And he didn't understand at first who you were or what this was all about, but like afterwards he kind of, I don't know, I guess respect.
I'm just a fan, you know. I'm just a fan.
Yeah, but you know, we all love you. We love you here.
I mean, that's the thing. I like this whole community of people that are you know, what's really interesting is we're examining pop culture fandom, and in a way, you know, in 50 years somebody's going to write a book about all of this time, you know, and what sort of happened in this time of I don't know what you'd call it, but social media upheaval, I would say, like how social media is kind of evolving and being on YouTube, or whether you're on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, there is a social revolution that we are in the middle of. And what it's going to mean and where it is going to go is something no man can say yet. And I think we're all a part of that. And with fandom, ultimately my response is that we just want things to be good. You know, the stories that we've liked to be good and to exist for their own sake, as opposed to, I mean, it's all this talk of whether you want to call it social justice or whether you want to call it woke, whatever the hell you want to call it. There is clearly a problem with how certain things like identity politics are trying to be shoehorned into classical storytelling forms. And the idea, I think, is a good one, you know, that we want more representation for people. And my thoughts about that is, what representation means is to hear the voices of other people, to bring the experience of other people and incorporate them into the stories that are being told, which I think is a good thing because I love hearing from different kinds of people. But the problem is that is becoming to be that becomes more important now to certain creators rather than the stories themselves.
Yep.
And the stories need to work on their own terms.
Yeah.
You know, it was very interesting. I was watching Elizabeth, my girlfriend. We watched the original series. We watched Next Generation, and now we're watching Deep Space Nine. And she's unfamiliar with Deep Space Nine. She's seen it, but now she's been watching it. She's been binging it. I mean, we've been immersed in Star Trek for months, and she's really enjoying Deep Space Nine. And she said to me, she said, you know, I really like the relationship between Commander Sisko and his son Jake. And I said, yes. And she goes, you know, the funny thing is aside from the fact that they are black, it never comes up. You know, it's not part of the story. I go, but it is a part of the story because they are black. And she says, yes, but they don't have to tell you that. And I said, I know. And I'm like, that's what representation truly is, when you don't have to even mention something, because in the 24th century, on the former Terok Nor Cardassian station renamed Deep Space Nine, nobody cares. I mean, we've moved beyond that. So true representation is what you see in Deep Space Nine, where there's many different actors of color that are on that show, but nobody says that. Nobody makes the show about that, or none of the producers had to say, look at how woke we are. This is why we cast the show this way. And one of the things I've really been enjoying is Avery Brooks's performance. Going back to the first season, I always felt when I first watched it was a little affected, but I don't feel that way now. Like, and I'm like, yeah, he got awesome when he shaved his head and grew the goatee for season 4, but he's really good. And the first season of Deep Space Nine, sure, there's some stupid episodes like Move Along Home, but like I watched the episode Dax last night, which is a kind of a mystery about Dax.
The trial. Yeah. The trial of Dax, Curzon Dax.
Yeah, Curzon Dax. And I watched it and I was like, you know, this episode's a lot better than I remember it being. And when people talk about the first season of Deep Space Nine, me included, I'm like, well, the pilot's good, and then I like Duet, and then I like In the Hands of the Prophet. So there's like 3 episodes, and really those are the 3 episodes I've watched the most. So going back and watching an episode of Deep Space Nine, and I was like, wow, Dax is good. It's really good. I really am enjoying this episode, and I had forgotten that. And I just every time I go back and watch Star Trek I haven't seen in a while, I'm like, I really like Star Trek. What happened?
Well, to your point earlier, when you said someone's going to chronicle this in 50 years, someone's currently doing that kind of right now. Author Stephen Walton has released the book, The Phantom Menace, A Phantom Betrayed. Volume 1 was released, and he's got his campaign for his 2nd volume, which has just started right now. And I'm still waiting for my book to arrive. I know he mailed it, so I'm looking forward to that. But Robot Shlomo down below me did the audiobook for that as well, and he's a lot of people have been responding quite positively to it.
Well, I'm now working on a documentary about, I guess we're calling it Lords of Their Realm, and it's a multi-part documentary that it's really starting to focus on. The focus came out of our Axanar situation because it's me, Christian Gossett, and Paul Jenkins, who's a Marvel Comics writer who wrote like the Inhumans and Spider-Man, and we've teamed up because we've all had similar experiences with the Axanar. We're all former directors of Axanar that are now either getting sued or attacked by Alec Peters, who is the impresario behind Axanar, and we are going to examine that, and we're gonna dip into things like Fandom Menace and Comicsgate and Gamergate and all of these things, and what does it all mean? And I want to interview him, the author of that book. I haven't read the book. I hope it's great.
I think we technically own the rights to the interview that we conducted with Alex, so maybe you should talk to us behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I want to interview.
I have to see on that. I don't know.
I want to interview Ethan Van Sciver. I want to even interview like Vox Day, who is involved with the Sad and the Rabid Puppies.
Well, I was just saying because I know you're not going to get whose involvement, but.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah, but I have hours and hours.
That's true.
And hours of
That's
video.
true.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would. I mean, just despite the fact that he sued me, I think I would absolutely try and get an interview with him.
Oh, anything we can do to help out,
and be like, hey, But I think it's really interesting now because the real story is how I believe that when an IP is, and I've talked a lot about this on my own show, when an IP is now owned by a corporation, it becomes fundamentally, if you have a storytelling IP, like Star Wars, like Star Trek, like Doctor Who, and it becomes primarily controlled by the needs of a corporation. The needs of a corporation are fundamentally and diametrically opposed to telling good stories, because the corporation's needs become about the corporation itself, and the stories that are being told have to further the goals of the corporation that are telling that story. And when you have like Star Wars, which becomes part of a multimedia empire, you by definition have to appeal to the widest common denominator. So the toys and the theme parks.
As I say, kind of like how Batman went from what we got in '89 to Batman and Robin being completely all about selling the toys.
Yeah, and if you look at like when we get, I think, the best forms of our IPs, if you look at things recent examples, like I always say what Ryan Coogler did with Creed, how he comes into this long-standing franchise. Sylvester Stallone, whose franchise it was, he was basically the corporation, even though he was still a single guy. You had Ryan Coogler come in and go, listen, I want to try this thing. I have this story. I love your franchise. And you get Creed, the people that did Cobra Kai. These are people that, who would have thought Cobra Kai would have worked? But then you come back and you see people that really love this franchise. And these are the products of singular individuals who have stories to tell, not a corporation going, we own Star Wars, we're now going to exploit it, so let's hire whomever to tell these tales. And the same thing has been true of like for Star Trek. It's like, let's find a corporation, or let's find, we're CBS, but let's find, a secret hideout to control all of Star Trek. And if you don't like their approach and they're controlling it, And their approach is to turn Star Trek into something else because the corporation says, we want Star Trek to do Star Wars numbers. Well, that's fine from an economic standpoint, but Star Wars and Star Trek have always been very, very different and very apart when it comes to their financial returns. So the idea that you're going to somehow take Star Trek and turn it into a franchise that's going to make the same amount of money as a Star Wars is wrong-headed. It never will be that way because it doesn't appeal to the same kind of audience. But they're like, well, it's got star in it and it takes place in space. So can't they do the same amount of money? And no, because they're fundamentally not nearly the same thing.
Exactly, because Star Trek is more of a long-term profit-making machine, as we learned from the 80s and 90s on the series. Star Wars was primarily a feature film franchise that started to make some decent cash, especially through toys and video games and books, and not in the actual medium aspect that we're more familiar with. So it's completely two different beasts, and trying to put them together is just even from a corporate standpoint. I look at them thinking that doesn't add up at all. It'd be like you kind of want to have the long-term profitable series ongoing with maybe sparse through a couple of tentpole films, but ideally it's like if you've got a reliable flow of cash coming in from your fan base, the last thing you want to do is rock the boat, and that's what ended up happening.
Right, absolutely. And if you look at, I am a huge toy collector. I like tchotchkes and collectibles and things, and Star Trek has always been my jam. I've been collecting Star Trek stuff my whole life. I love starships, the starships of the Star Trek universe. I haven't bought Star Trek Discovery. Doesn't appeal to that side of me at all. I don't like anything that has appeared in that. There's not one starship design. I mean, admittedly, I did buy their version of the Enterprise just because I bought all these different versions of the Enterprise, but I don't necessarily like it. And they haven't even the lineage, the design work that's on display in that show, because they wanted to change it so much that this is sort of a weird thing to say, but the Starship Discovery, their hero starship, is so far removed from the actual design aesthetic of the original Star Trek and even Next Generation. I have no interest in it. Like Star Trek Picard, there was nothing other than seeing a classic Romulan ship. The hero starship in that show, La Serena,
The Van Halen one, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was ugly, and I don't ever want a model of that ship. It's generic looking, other than the fact that it's painted like Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen's guitar, rest in peace. It's not an iconic design. Like they've created it. One of the things about Star Trek is the original series, because they were trying to sell color TVs when Star Trek was on, they were transitioning from black and white shows to color shows. Star Trek was designed to be this vibrant, very, very colorful show. One of the byproducts of that was your main characters were in these vibrant colored shirts, whether it's red, gold, blue sciences, and
Technicolor.
You look at that and you look
green
at
and purple walls.
Technicolor, but color TV.
Oh yeah, the lighting, the gels, and all the sets were all vibrantly lit. Now everything has got this generic, overall sort of bluish, steely, silver. The show itself, people, it looks so good, but it doesn't feel at all. It doesn't have the Star Trek aesthetic at all. It looks like something else, like Star Wars. I mean,
yeah.
Third season, the first episode of the third season of Discovery was like watching 20 different sci-fi franchises all mashed into one. And
that first shot looks just like something out of Star Wars Attack of the Clones or something.
Absolutely. And then ask yourself, try this. If you go back, well, I'm not saying you should watch the episode again. How many people get killed in that episode?
Approximately
Firefights,
13.
straight up murdered. I mean, no, there's got to be more than that. All the people in the base that they're firing the weapons at, and then the people that are chasing. There's so many people that die. Like Burnham as a Starfleet officer is literally just flat out murdering dudes left and right. Whatever happened?
Well, under the influence of drugs too.
That's really in her character, though. I mean, she did start a war,
right? I mean, it's pulp science fiction that is exactly the thing that Star Trek was trying to move away from. It's like literally Star Trek Discovery is our now equivalent of a 30s Flash Gordon serial, which is everything Star Trek was not trying to be. And now
Yeah.
it's kind of gone full circle, and it's become
Yeah,
this
that's
pulp
true.
sci-fi thing. And then at the end, you get 5 minutes of like Star Trekian philosophy, but none of it really makes much sense. I've been getting up for 40 years, and whatever happened to subspace communication? I mean, you're telling me that all the dilithium in the world burned up, or in the universe burned up, but the member planets of the Federation are still there. Where's the transporter technology? You think that they have not extrapolated. If you go 900 years in the future from the Star Trek universe, the technology that they would have then would be, I can't even imagine what it would be like. It would be, and yet we're shown it, the galaxy is now some Mad Max future, which is so weird. It doesn't make any sense. They're not extrapolating, well, the burn happened. Okay, so all the what about quantum singularities that the Romulans use to power their ships? They don't use dilithium.
That's what I suggested as a missed opportunity for this season, is that the Romulan Star Empire would have rebuilt out of the ashes because they don't use dilithium technology. They would have conquered the entire galaxy because they don't use dilithium for warp drive. Like, the Federation could have lost their ships. Okay, tragic event. Sure, I think it's BS, but okay, let's play with it. Well, who would come to benefit from that? The Romulans. And
same with
the Borg.
The Borg, too. Yeah, slipstream technology.
It's the burn.
Transwarp
drive that doesn't use dilithium.
I mean, and the idea, it's such a weird, like, why have something like that? Like, why go into a future where you've made up, you've shoehorned some magical catastrophe that has no basis in any kind of Star Trek lore? Simply, it's the same thing that, like, there's an evil AI that's going to come and destroy all the synthetic life. Like, what? Let's run
like
that down.
Demon from Beyond and others. Yeah, that's what they do. They do a lot of mythical stuff.
It's Cthulhu or whatever, but the very premise doesn't make any sense. You know, the question would be, so they talk about synthetic life, and yet the synthetic life they're talking about are only androids that are made to look human. That isn't really synthetic life at all. You've just built a machine that's anthropomorphized. So why would anybody care? Now, if you're talking about replicants that were actually, say, biologically engineered to look like humans, but are biologically, say, indistinguishable from humans, well, then you're challenging God. So that would make sense. But to just have a machine that's anthropomorphized that looks like a human, why would anybody care? I mean, you're basically, that's not synthetic life that anybody would bother with. It makes no sense to me. And what about alien races that aren't humanoid that have built, like, what if the Horta decide to make, an android Horta for Janus 6? We've built android versions of ourselves so we can better, we only have generations once every 1,000 years, but we needed more people, so we built our own android Hortas. It's silicon based, but it's is that a synthetic life form that anybody would care about?
It'd be kind of funny if they were a carbon-based android, because they're silicon-based species.
Right.
And androids are silicon-based humans, yeah.
I mean, that would be, but none of that, that's the problem with all of this modern stuff, is that the people writing it don't even think about those things. They just throw this stuff out there willy-nilly, and you're supposed to go like, okay, but really any astute viewer is like, what? That makes no sense at all.
So obviously you watched this last episode yet, or no?
I haven't watched episode 2 yet. Did it drop? Is it already available?
Yeah.
It's available. It's very similar in beat structure to the previous episode, just from the Discovery point of view. And I postulated the theory that it was originally these 2 episodes were one solid pilot, and then they reshot sections to make them 2 episodes.
That makes sense.
What though? I didn't hate this episode, and that's because it wasn't the worst, and mainly because we didn't have Michael Burnham dragging it down. There's some moments that actually feel like Trek is convoluted as some of the bullshit is in it. But yeah, it's still not good.
Well, I think the real disappointing thing is they didn't extrapolate a world that's very interesting. The world of we have. It's like nobody has read science fiction novels, and I don't think they have. I mean, there's so many I look around. I started reading Peter Hamilton's book, The Reality Dysfunction. It's a 1,100-page book. There's more. They have a timeline in the beginning of that book to explain where the universe is at, and it's a book unto itself. There's more imagination in the timeline before the story gets started in that book than anything we see in modern Star Trek. And it's not that I want to hate people like, oh, Rob, you want things to be like they were. And I'm like, no, I don't. The whole point about that I've loved about Star Trek is it's always moved forward, it's progressed. But what Star Trek is now is it's an amalgamation of a bunch of other things. And the people that are writing it are throwing all this stuff together, but it doesn't hang together as its own science fiction franchise. It doesn't.
What's really
None of it
sad. Oh, sorry.
works. No, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is that what's really bothers me some is that one of the writers, especially on this season, but she was also, I think, on other stuff, was Sidney Lumet's daughter, Jenny. And Sidney Lumet directed some pretty darn good movies, and it looks like the apple fell really far from the tree in this age, because his daughter, who's I think been partners with Alex Kurtzman as a writing team for I think 3 or 4 years now, clearly isn't contributing anything to the stuff that she's working on, at least not in a way that you would think a legacy such as her would be able to contribute. Well, and it's just kind of mind-boggling. It's like, how do you have someone who's like, no, go on.
Well, Kirsten Beyer, who has written a number of fantastic Star Trek novels. She's concentrated on the post-Voyager Star Trek novel world. She's one of the co-producers of the show, and I can only imagine that when they come up with things like The Burn, that she's sitting in the corner going, oh my God, come on. Like, she knows her Star Trek backwards and forwards. She really, she knows the characters, she knows the Federation, she knows all of these things. And to watch this stuff, I'm like, can you please allow Kirsten Beyer to weigh in on all of these things? I mean, the idea that we're watching a show now where the characters have willingly decided to go 950 years into the future. And when Michael Burnham gets to that future, she acts like, why does she throw away her suit? The first thing she does is get rid of the Red Angel suit and shoots it off where? I don't know. I guess it's supposed to be a beacon for the Discovery to find her. I don't know what she was doing. Why would you get rid of that suit? But they don't act.
She was using it to send the signal to Spock, but it just didn't compute. It didn't compute.
And why would you expect that the universe wouldn't be unrecognizable? I mean, can you imagine if you lived in the 10th century and you went forward and came here to the 21st century, what it would be like? There would be nothing, hot cars, airplanes, computers. There would be nothing familiar to
overload.
You. I mean, yeah, you would, and so the idea that what I find that the future they're showing us is monumentally unimaginative. You know, they've decided, oh, we're gonna use this catastrophe this ridiculous catastrophe to make the world look more understandable to us, rather than really look into, let's run down these concepts. I mean, humanity wouldn't even look, we'd all be transhuman. We'd all have replacement. Our bodies would probably be synth bodies, and we'd live for thousands of years. Like, why would there be any recognizable human beings anymore with the kind of technology that would exist? They're not extrapolating on any interesting science or science fiction concepts, and it's maddening, when it could have been really interesting if you had people that knew or were science fiction writers. And that's what it bums me out.
Yeah, because they're trying to take a fantasy approach to science fiction. I mean, I was talking about this on another stream. Like, the whole concept of the Conclave of Eight sounds like something you'd read in a fantasy novel, like a Wheel of Time, like a Robert Jordan novel or something of that nature. And then you have The Burn, which is like a mythical, like a virus or a mythical type of disaster that came in and is kind of like neutralized the vast majority of dilithium, but there's still bits of it around that are considered precious. I'm like, okay, so why do these bits survive and not the rest? And
right,
what happened to the whole idea of that one character from the short trek that could grow dilithium like overnight type of thing? Like, did her technology get magically lost as well? And if so, how and why? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's
It
so
just boggles my mind. Like it's just,
well, and also it's just it's so not imaginative. Like if you were to sit down with a writing staff and go, okay, what if the Star Trek universe, if you've decided already that you're going to turn it into some Mad Max, maybe that you're already done, but if I was going to go 1,000 years in the future, I would sit down with my writing staff and for a week spitball the future. What would this look like? And look up
interplanetary
science fiction.
teleportation.
Yeah, all of those things. And how would things be different? And why wouldn't first of all, the idea of dilithium exploding, dilithium isn't very big. Are you saying that whatever happened, dilithium is filtering, or it's causing, it's a conduit of a matter antimatter reaction, but it's not like a nuclear weapon, and it's not even
No, it's
very big.
more like a neutral matter. It's more
Right.
like a neutral matter. It's neither positive or anti. It's just something that allows the two to combine,
Yeah.
and it's of its own thing.
And
I don't understand why they don't explore it that way.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, and I feel that way about all of our all of these franchises. And if you look at whether it's Doctor Who or whether it's Star Wars, like Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker was a shockingly unimaginative film. Like there was nothing in that movie other than people going from place to place. There was no it had no central story in it. Like even Empire Strikes Back, you could say, okay, the Empire found the rebels, they routed their base on Hoth, and then our characters Han and Leia and Luke go off on this separate adventure where Luke is learning about himself and Han and Leia are growing closer together. And then you have the betrayal on Cloud City and all that. There's really interesting stuff happening with these groups of characters. And in Rise of Skywalker, what was going on? And how do you not know? Like Script Doctor, screenplays are it's not like you don't know. A screenplay is a form that has been examined and ad infinitum. You've read scripts. I used to read screenplays for a living, and I could tell you if a script was good or not by reading. I mean, people would say, well, you could read the first 10 pages. Now you can tell if someone could write a screenplay on page 1, but by the 5th page of the script, you're either in or you're not. You either know what's going on or you don't. And I'm surprised when I see bad screenplays get made. It's shocking.
Yeah,
to me.
it boggles my mind because it's basically just the hypocrisy of the industry, which is that if you are friends with someone that's got the money, your stuff will get made, and if you don't have any friends or connections there, you have such a higher standard to earn your spot, so to speak. And I understand the respect of that. It's like if you don't know, if you're a brand new person coming on the scene, you better have something amazing that really gets people excited and want to invest. But for some strange reason, it seems like after a couple of years, after you get that first stepping stone, you kind of some writers lose their way in trying to maintain that quality and that effort. And it's something that I felt I've been unfortunate enough to get into that area for a little bit of a time, but I've been able to catch myself and go back to, trying to really push my imagination, trying to think, okay, what would 1,000 other writers do in this situation? How can I be different from that to sort of inject some new life into the idea I'm presenting? And more often than not, I find myself doing 3 or 4 outlines of a story before I even go to my first draft, just because I want to make sure that the stuff that I can do off of memory is the best stuff that there is, because I'm remembering it. And if I can write without the outline that I've reworked over and over again, then I know whoever's reading it for that first time is probably going to have the same type of energy that I'm putting into it received on their end. And yet we get scripts where you have literally a scene that's a road to exposition, where Michael Burnham is told, this is what's been happening the last 1,000 years. The Federation's gone, which to her perspective is like only a century old. So for her to assume that it would survive for the rest of time is absurd. And not think that it would change or maybe be replaced by something else, because she's reacting to it like us as a Star Trek fan would react. Oh my God, the Federation's gone. Like, yeah, that's a big deal for us as fans.
Right.
But for her as someone in there, it's like that shouldn't be a big deal, especially someone raised by Vulcans who logically knows that systems of government change over time. It's something that just doesn't compute. It doesn't feel true to her character. And then to be told, oh yeah, most of Dilithium blew up
Well,
in a
yeah,
burn
'cause
and it
she's-
crippled the Federation, and then for the entire series and these writers to conflate that and think that the Federation and Starfleet are the exact same thing when they're not is also bothers me a lot. Since Kurtzman and Secret Hideout and Bad Robot took over, they just don't understand that there's separation of them. It's like saying like the mayor is also a Starfleet officer of a town.
Well, it's also, they also seem to believe that the Federation is somehow a fleet of ships when you're talking about member worlds. And they haven't mentioned, like, they've shown us the wreckage. Apparently, there's just the wreckage of destroyed starships everywhere, around every planet, around every Federation base. You'd think after 150 years that the dangers of having lots of debris in a zero gravity environment or in a vacuum that's surrounding wherever you are, whether it's a planet. I mean, we have problems with space garbage around Earth right now. We almost had a big collision last week, which would have wreaked havoc if these two pieces they almost hit of space garbage. Because what happens is, like in gravity, if they ping pong off each other, and they can create a storm of space garbage that's being propelled at high speeds that pose a danger to satellites and the International Space Station and everything. But in Discovery, it's like the Federation. The Federation's made up of planets with billions of people on them, and they're all connected via space subspace technology. So why couldn't you call up any of the why do we have a Federation starbase? This guy can only see out however many sectors, and he's waiting for somebody to show up. Shouldn't he be in contact with Earth? I mean, wouldn't the technology be such? It's 800 years since the burn. There was 800 years of technology that was increasing until the burn happened. And they don't take that into consideration. It's just like the technology is all the same. It would be unrecognizable.
Yeah.
The technology increases at an exponential rate. So it's almost as if they haven't changed any of the technology. Sure, there's holographic technology and people have personal transporters. Well, that's crazy.
Well, and that goes to like what you guys were just saying is like she shouldn't be surprised that Starfleet isn't around. They've gone farther into the future than Starfleet had existed at that point in her past.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like
a factor of 4.
Exactly. Like you could imagine, like, yeah, of course we're at some more advanced, like whatever. But speaking of badly written things, Ann Carrots brings up that Peter Hamilton's books are overly epic. I think somebody mentioned them earlier. I don't know, but that super chat was from a while ago. But Ian Slater has a question here. It looks like, what if Burnham getting rid of the suit is a metaphor for the showrunners shedding the Star Trek canon, and the burn is also being the same metaphor?
Well, that just plays into the fact that why do you want to make a Star Trek show and shed all of what makes Star Trek Star Trek?
Exactly.
And they've been doing it since 2009. It's such a weird thing because it's like their mandate is turn this into something else, and what you're doing is you're turning it into the 10,000 other things that you've watched. The funny thing about Star Trek is it has all of its lore. It doesn't need to be reinvented. The lore is already there, and it's so rich, and it's literally, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Star Trek that has established all of this. And when what I don't understand is, if you look at human history, like look at the last 1,000 years of human history, well, that's what you look to create a civilization 1,000 years hence. It's like, okay, what's happened in human history for the last 1,000 years? Let's run that down. Now let's extrapolate what the next 1,000 years of history is going to be based on what humanity has done over the last 1,000 years. And now we've got Star Trek lore. So you've got all these other races to add into the mix. And metaphorically, you could use all the skirmishes and the wars and the things that have ever happened in human history and apply those on a galactic scale and be like, okay, so why don't we write and this is what I think responsible writers would do, is they should sit down and create a history of the future. I mean, obviously, there's books. There's already the Star Trek chronology that charts the whole history of the Star Trek universe. You can buy it. It exists. Well, why didn't they do that and come up with a history that they're going to refer to? Why not Middle Earth that shit? I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien, he could tell you exactly what happened in the entire 5,000-year history of Middle Earth because he figured it out. He wrote it all. He did all these notes for himself. And you look at the Silmarillion and the whole thing. They're basing this new Lord of the Rings series on the second age of Middle Earth. We saw Lord of the Rings takes place in the third age. We saw the end of where this Amazon series should lead up to, which is the beginning of Fellowship, which is the first War of the Ring when all the forces are fighting Sauron for the first time. And the second age of Middle Earth, the way it was depicted in the Silmarillion, is really interesting. Tolkien figured all of this shit out already, like who's doing what to whom and how Sauron used to be a man and how he was manipulating everybody. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in that. So if you're going to look to make a show, I'm like, yeah, they're going to make it in the second age because it's all there in the Silmarillion. Well, if you want to work on this kind of grand canvas, you've got to write this stuff beforehand and figure your shit out, because only then can you start telling grand stories in this universe that you want to be in. You need to understand everything about the Star Trek universe before you start writing scripts at 900 years in the future. Otherwise, you end up with amalgamations of everything from Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, which I never thought I would say in relation to Star Trek, to The Road Warrior, to Firefly, to a million other things.
Right.
To a little bit of The Hateful Eight, too.
Absolutely. There's a little, I mean, it's like they took everything that they've seen in the last 5 years and thrown it all into this blender, because you've got writers that don't read or know science fiction. So they don't understand. I mean, I got thousands of books of science fiction novels that do great world building. And the first thing they should do is do, it is hard, but it's like,
much work.
But if you do all that, your stories get filled in. You don't have to say things. You just show them. You let Burnham. We should be. You know what you got to look at like this, and I don't know why they don't do this, but one of my favorite miniseries of all time is Shogun, that was based on James Clavell's book. Shogun is about a dude, like I think it's in the 16th century, 17th century, an English guy, Blackthorn, who washes up in Japan. And we, as the audience, like he shows him, he doesn't speak Japanese. He's never been to Japan before. And so the whole thing is how he gets involved in Japanese politics and everything that's going on. But we, the audience, sees through his eyes. Like, they don't subtitle the Japanese a lot. You hear this Japanese and Blackthorn's like, I don't know what the hell you're saying. And that's kind of for us as the audience. And so we go into this alien civilization that's very alien and see how it all works. And they should have taken a page from Shogun to show us the future, where they don't tell you things, they show them to you and you have to figure it out. You're an astute viewer. You don't need Burnham to say, well, what happened here? Well, there was the burn. Well, what happened here? Well, there's this. Where are we going now? Well, we're doing this. Why can't we just discover that as we go?
In a show called Discovery, of all things. No, that's very poignant and true. Willie Woodward has another question for us, to the wise ones, he says. When the writing, art, etc. isn't looking good, outsourcing isn't looking good, how do you get yourself when you don't think it'll be good? How do you get yourself when you don't think... I'm not sure what he's asking here, per se.
To think it's... Like, how do we get ourselves to think it's good when we don't think it's good? Or...
The question of the wise ones, when the writing, art, etc. isn't looking good. Outsourcing isn't looking good. How do you get yourself when you don't think it'll be good? I don't quite know what.
Going?
You'll have to clarify the question, Willie. Let me see here. Till we get to that one, let's just you don't have to send another super chat. Just clarify what you mean. Adam Wolford says, I think they stole in the burn from a young adult book where all magic explored. One can use magic and no one can use it. I think it's called Age of Burns. Oh, that wouldn't surprise me, considering Kurtzman, that's all he does know is to borrow from other things.
Right. Yeah, I could. But even
that reminds me of like Aragorn, right? Oh, sorry, Robert.
No.
Was Aragorn? Didn't it have a different name in the book series though? I can't remember.
Well, yeah, my understanding with Aragorn is that like the dragons did magic and then they all but all of them almost died except for one, and that's what keeps magic alive, if I'm
Oh,
remembering
you mean
correctly.
Aragon, the book Aragon?
Oh,
Aragon, yes,
Aragon.
thank
That's
you.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking Aragorn. You mean Strider?
Yeah, it's because you guys were just talking about Lord of the
I was
Rings
thinking
too, and I didn't
Strider
even
too
think.
at the same time.
Yeah. I think Blade Runner is one of the better adaptations. Here's hoping for Dune, says Fezman93. Well, I've never actually read the original short story that Blade Runner's based on. And I've only seen the movie adaptation of Dune to this point, and I haven't read the script, but I know somebody else who has here. Or should I
Yes.
say two people who have here anyway. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that.
I heard something really interesting about Dune that I had not heard from anybody before. And I heard it from a fairly reliable source. And I heard that they've actually planned 3 Dune movies. And obviously it's going to be performance based, but the first Dune movie is the first half of Dune, the book Dune. And the second Dune movie they're making would be called Dune Prophet, because in the novel Dune, it's broken up into books, different books within that book. And then the third Dune movie would be Dune Messiah. And what the 3 movies would tell you this whole story of is the story of Paul Atreides. And it follows, because the Dune Messiah, the book Dune Messiah is small. So they're going to tell you the entire rise and fall of Paul Atreides, which I think is a really cool idea. I hope that comes to pass. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's where, like I don't understand in the case of making Dune, if that's the plan, why not just shoot them all at once? Like why not do that? I mean, I know
I said the same thing too. Yeah.
I know it's expensive, but it's probably a lot less expensive than stopping and starting. And to be honest, I just don't see Dune. I love the script, but I don't see it being some breakout, billion-dollar hit. Just simply because the subject matter alone, it's not like an Avengers Endgame where you're going to get your kids and parents all watching it together. 8-year-olds can go see the Avengers movies and be like, "This is awesome," but I don't think they're going to dig Dune. Dune is a very adult, it's who knows.
And then Fezman also says September 8th should be known as St. Michael's Day. All right. Adam,
September 8th is the day that Star Trek debuted. And in America, September 8th, 1966.
Yeah, now he's saying it should be for Michael Burnham. No.
Adam, I think it was a day or so earlier in Canada, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. I think it might have been the 6th. I'm not sure, but yes, it was like a day or two earlier.
Damn Canadians.
I think it was the 6th. Yeah.
Adam Wolford sent in $5. They also
Shatner was the best captain, and he's played by.
I'm kidding, and you know that. And they also can use nuclear fusion to make warp drives without using dilithium. I guess they don't like the idea of using nuclear power.
But the Romulans use artificial singularity to
like you would think that if dilithium blew up, why wouldn't the Federation start using that as well? I mean, and also, who knows where they would go in 800 years? Like they wouldn't be. The funny thing about their thinking is that they haven't taken into consideration all of the time that would have passed from the time the Discovery left to go into the future. I mean, that would be the difference of you're looking at if somebody like from the 12th century showed up in the 20th century. I mean, that's a long period of time to travel, and the changes in society are astonishingly enormous. And they haven't shown us that it has not been reflected in the show.
Yeah.
Once somebody from the 12th century gets past the White Cliffs of Dover, then that's it. All bets are off. Everything is a culture shock to them.
Yeah, everything. I mean, everything that from clothing to food to transportation. I mean, think about it. What would if somebody from the 12th century wanted to go to the bathroom, they would just go walk over there and do their business or whatever. And I mean, think about flush toilets. Just a simple bodily function.
Yeah. Even the last 100 years, my father's father came here from Italy, and air travel wasn't a thing when he came over here. And if I said to my father one time, if you told your father, my grandfather, that if you said, how long does it take to cross the ocean? He would probably said 10 days. Would he believe you if you said there's going to be a time that you're going to be able to cross it in 4.5, 5, 6 hours? He said, probably not.
Right. And that was, like you said, in 100 years. My grandmother was born in 1900. She died in 1983. But I used to ask her when I was a kid, I was like, what was it like, the first time these things, when you saw a car? I mean, she was 10 years old in 1910. She was 30 during the Great Depression. She was a teenager during World War I, and she was in her 40s during World War II. And we went to the moon. I mean, what she saw in the 20th century, and she would just laugh because in her mind, it was just shit that happened. Like, oh, now we have airplanes. It was, and it was gradual. It was gradual change. But if you think about, like, even in our lifetime, I look at video games now,
right,
and I marvel at them.
How just 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we had Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, and now look where we're at. Yeah,
it's astonishing. Just and you look at the progression of, and that's just, I mean, I remember we got a Coleco Telstar that was Pong, and it was this one unit, and we, people would come over and play with it, and the neighbors like, oh, you have Pong. I was like 8, and then people would come over, and like the fact you could play a game on your TV,
right?
It was crazy.
Right into the unit. Yeah, I remember.
Yep. And Willie clarifies here. He says, "Yeah, that's what I meant. Get yourself going." Boy, that's tough. When if you don't have faith in what you're working on, I don't know. I mean, Script and Robert could probably answer this better, but I don't know. What would you? I mean, unless you're under some kind of gun.
Well,
I mean,
if
I
the
think
script's
at that
not working
point,
and the art's not working, and
Yeah.
outsourcing isn't working, that's 3 strikes against you in my
right.
opinion.
I was just gonna say at that
It's
point, unless
basically
you're
go
under
back to
some
the
kind
drawing
of
board because
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean,
unless you're on a contract or unless you've already started shooting and something screw up.
I mean, I've worked on things that, like, the first movie I ever edited was a full moon movie called Arcade. And it was John Delancey was in it, and it was about kids that get sucked into a video game. It was
Why is it every time I talk to you, I love you more and more?
Well, so I'll tell you the story here's this movie was directed by Albert Pune. It was so bad they edited the movie in like 7 days. It sat on a shelf. So and this is a full moon movie. It ended up coming out in 1993. So I was hired to work with the actor Peter Billingsley, who's in Arcade, and he worked in post-production on the film. And our job, they had new visual effects made for it, and we were just supposed to drop in the visual effects to where the old terrible visual effects went. And after the first, like, we were recutting we were just supposed to put the movie back together the way it was and drop in the effects, and it was just god awful. I mean, the movie was god awful. And I said to my friend, because we had all the negative retransferred, who was overseeing this, my friend Dan Schwager, I go, Dan, there's a much better movie here. They originally cut the movie in 7 days, so it was a quick and dirty hatchet job. Can we recut the movie? And Dan's like, hey, man, you've never cut a movie before. I said, nah, I was at USC. I got an A in editing. I've been editing my whole life. Yeah, but you've never cut a movie before. And I'm like, well, as an astute film fan, and Peter, obviously, he's been in movies. He was in A Christmas Story. He's Don't You Try a Kid. What if we gave it a shot? And so it got approved that we were able to cut the first 10 minutes of the movie. And we recut. This movie was completely unwatchable. And then we recut the first 10 minutes, and we added all the character stuff and the story beats, and it all started to work. And we showed it to Charles Band, who's the head of Full Moon, and he's like, how did you guys do this? And we're like, well, it was all shot. So we were working on a movie that we knew was unwatchable garbage. And our creative mandate was, how can we make this better? So we knew Arcade was never going to be Tron, it was never going to be that. But we knew that from a creative standpoint that it could be better. And we were given 100% leeway. We had no oversight because we'd earned with our first 10 minutes that they thought the movie was better. So I worked on this movie, cutting this movie with Peter for 6 months. And then we oversaw the post-production sound. And we worked on this movie almost for the better part of a year. And we took something that was unwatchable and we made it into something that was mediocre. But I was damn proud of that mediocrity.
I don't care. Fucking Full Moon's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
Even their mediocre shit is like amazing. So
well,
like,
so what was amazing to us and what was amazing to the people at Full Moon was they're like, this is an entirely different movie, and because if you look at the original, it just none of it made any sense, and there are people out there that have the first version. It was released as a pre-release videotape, and what was amazing what kept us going creatively on this project was we looked at it as a creative challenge. Like every step of the way, we could make this movie better somehow. And how could we do that? And it was actually nominated at the time. It was nominated for Best Direct-to-Video Release of the Year, which in our case we didn't win, but we lost to another Full Moon movie. But that's how we kept our creative juices flowing. And it was because everybody was rooting for us to try and make this movie the best it could be, and it could only go up, and I think that what happens when you get involved in situations where there's so much money involved is I think everybody should always be working for the good of the project. How can we make this better through every step of the way, through production? Well, first of all, through writing, through production, then through post. How can we make it better? And the problem is, in order to do that, you have to have a figurehead, somebody at the top who is allowing their people to make it as good as it can be. And there has to be a vision at the top where somebody says, there you go. That's it. See those? Okay. You see those the three, like the skull ship and the weird, it looks like a kind of a futuristic mouse. And then the flying skeleton metal. None of those things were in the original movie. Yeah. Those were all new effects, and they were created by a company in Montreal called DHD Post Image. Now, I'm sure they don't exist anymore because this is 1993. But yeah, that's from Arcade. That's Megan Ward.
I grew up on Full Moon shit, man.
Dude, you would have loved when Full Moon was at its height. Check this out, and I've always wanted to return to this. We were making a movie a month.
That's the thing, dude. You don't like me and my buddy. We had a dream that we would go work for Full Moon one day. Like,
it was
totally.
At the time in 93, 92, 93, when they were making the Subspecies movies. They were shooting things over in Romania and Italy, like Castle Freak with Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs, and then we were doing like Doll Man versus Demonic Toys and
the Puppet
Transfers movie, the Puppet Master movies, and they were shooting them there. And it was a facility where you'd walk into work, and there was sets being built and painted, and Dave Allen's effects company was doing stop motion animation, and then people were shooting scenes. I got to be a monster in this movie called The Lurking Fear. They're like, can you come in this weekend and put on a full prosthetic, monster suit? And I'm like,
can I,
man? Yeah, I mean, and it was like you'd go into work.
I'll take off the one I'm wearing right now, but yeah.
I mean, it was so much fun. I mean, I've always wanted to do that. I look at what Jason Blum is doing, with the Blumhouse movies, and I love his model. Like this, Full Moon movies were all made for $1 million, and we had an output deal with Paramount Pictures at the time, so we knew that we were getting distribution. All the movies were getting distribution, so they could make a lot of money. And
like how many movies was it a year? I can't even remember now. It was like
there was so many.
I mean, one a month, like you were saying.
Yeah, we were making one a month, and like it was so much fun. And they were all to be fair, they were all kind of ripoffs of other movies.
Cheesy fun shit though. That was they were
yeah, like Dr. Mordred was Doctor Strange.
Yeah, well, that's because Charles actually tried to get the rights to Doctor Strange. It just didn't work out. So he's like, "Fucking, I'll make my own."
Yeah, and that's exactly what he did. And it's like, hey, you want to put stop motion dinosaurs in something? Yeah, and Dave Allen would do it.
I?
I mean, it was so much fun, and to be working there. Because if you came up with an idea and you said, I'd really like to write this movie and direct it, they'd be like, okay. It sounds
That's
sounds
what
good.
I love about that environment. Like that whole, do you want to put the, well, do I? Of course I do.
It was an amazing, and it was all done at this facility. And like Charlie would spare no expense. Like we had at the top of this facility, we had this unbelievable coffee bar. It was like a Starbucks. Before there was Starbucks everywhere. We had this, and baristas.
I heard he always had a lot of lovely ladies around too.
Oh, well, because we were also making the softcore, hard R stuff. the Torchlight movies, and that was
Yeah.
good too. So you know, it was there was nothing bad about working at Full Moon, except a lot of the time Charlie couldn't make payroll.
Wow.
You know, there's always a downside, but it was for the year that I was working there, it was so much fun. And
It
what
sounds
happened
like
was
it.
we got shut down by Paramount because of
Yeah.
some financial shenanigans, and then, you know, but he's still out there making movies, Charlie. But
He's
I've always
back,
wondered,
yeah.
why, like, if I had my druthers, I would love to set up a genre. Like, even if the movies like Blumhouse is making them for $5 million or less,
Let's do it.
it'd be so great to get some funding and set up a facility like Full Moon or Hammer Horror before us from the 50s and 60s, where
Or
you had
Corman's many.
Corman was doing the same thing down in Venice and to have a facility that is making specifically, I look at Shudder, for instance. Shudder would be a perfect place where if you knew that all your movies were being made, that you were going to make, and Shudder's making, there's some great stuff. Have you seen on Shudder? It's called Mortuary, the Mortuary something.
No, but I have seen some of their other stuff though.
There's some great, like to have a place like Shudder where you would just be making like Full Moons, like one time, here's Dollman versus Demonic Toys, and here's Subspecies, and here's Lurking Fear, and here's the Puppet Master series, and you're making these kinds of things. Like, I would love to do that, but make it smart, genre fair.
They did a lot of sci-fi stuff too, like trying to think.
Well, Trancers with Jack Death, Tim Thomerson, you know, the time traveling cop.
Oh, I've seen Trent. Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah, Trancers was the first one, was an Empire picture back in the 80s. You know, when he was Charlie had Empire when they did Reanimator and From Beyond and Dolls, and then Empire sort of morphed into Full Moon. And it was fun, man. It was fun to just be young and working every day. You're going to the studio, like you guys said, hot chicks, robots, monsters, stop motion. I mean, you know, if you told my 8-year-old self that's what work would be every day, I'd be like, no way.
A couple of B movie stars hanging out here and there, I'm sure.
Oh, I mean, all the time. You know,
Paul and Matt walking in, just like whoa.
I mean, it was I mean, Helen Hunt was in Trancers too.
That's right. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, and I met her at Union Station.
Once in a while, they would pull in a pretty big name, wouldn't they?
Yeah, you know, it was, and we don't have anything like that anymore. Right. That came from
Well, wasn't she kind of big by then, or
Helen Hunt?
No,
Yeah.
she's done like TV movies and stuff.
She been in like Raising Arizona and shit like that at that point, though. Or
no, I don't think Helen Hunt was in Raising Arizona.
Or am I thinking of who am I thinking of?
Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
You know who was? Greg Kinnear worked as a accountant at Full Moon. He was like in the accounting department, you know, and it was, you know, who wrote Arcade. Here's what's really funny. When we were recutting Arcade, the Arcade monster, we had to rewrite he didn't have dialogue. So we're like making up this shit. David Goyer wrote the script for Arcade.
Well, I know he wrote Demonic Toys as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
we were just on him for that.
We were rewriting David Goyer and putting mods. It was so much fun. I'm like, well, let's rewrite this.
Probably why I elevated to mediocre.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry, I could have wrote Demonic Toys much better. Give me the same whatever he had to work with. I would have. Yeah. Anyway, Gino X has a question here. Speaking of sci-fi, are any of you familiar with the Lex? Really underrated sci-fi that I would like seeing more of again. I'm not, but I'm imagining a couple.
A lot of
guys
sexy stuff in Lex. You know, that was
for the
German.
first season, especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer's in an episode of Lex.
Yeah,
it was a German-Canadian joint production, shot in I think Nova Scotia, if I remember correctly. Pretty popular series. At least at the time, the first season it aired, it was really popular. Then it had a hiatus for a little bit, and then they did, I think, 3 more additional seasons to kind of close it out. And it just got more absurd with every season, but charmingly so.
Yes. I mean, what a wacky show! And the Lex, the ship, and I forget, was it called the Lex?
The ship was called the Lex, and it was a giant bug in space with an exoskeleton built inside it.
Yeah, it was wacky.
And we were talking about
and the bathrooms that they showed in Lex, we're crazy. Toilets have giant tongues to clean you.
Right. Right.
Interesting. Maybe I will check this out. Sounds like right up your alley, Rob.
I think you'll like it.
I'm talking about our Rob, of course.
Yeah.
Electron star collapse. Speaking of Denny Villeneuve, or how you say his name, we were talking about him before.
How do you say that name?
Denny Villeneuve or
No,
Villeneuve?
it's Denis Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
Leto.
To eventually make a rendezvous with Rama.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Electron Star Collapse. That is correct. What I would give to see that. See, that's another thing I'll tell you. With a lot of these, with Dune and the Foundation series being adapted, I think a lot more of these big classic giant sci-fi novels, assuming they do well financially, could get made. And Rendezvous with Rama is a great example of that. I'd love to see that movie get made.
You know, I haven't checked on it, but I will tell you this, Rob. I don't know if you noticed or not, but the Dune trailer was like doing like so much better than the Batman trailer was. So I was like, wow, maybe there's more interest in this than I thought.
I hope so. I mean,
wonder.
but the thing is, the story of Dune is the story of Dune, and it's political and it's intelligent and it's
kind of tough to wrap your head around if going into it, if you're expecting a big sci-fi, like, action adventure epic. It's not. It's a lot. It's pretty slow, actually.
Yes, and that's exactly the one thing I think it has going against it. But if it looks great, if the visuals are great, I really liked the script a lot. I hope it
was a really well done adaptation of that first half of that book. I was really impressed with it. I was actually just going to debate recently with a friend on a Zoom meeting who just didn't get it, and to the point where he's saying, like, why doesn't it have all these things? And I'm like, they're right there on the page, like they're set on this page, like, were you not reading the script? And he's like, no, I read it. It's like, well, what you don't understand why the Harkonnens are upset that they're losing the planet? He's like, oh, I didn't realize that they had the planet to begin with. It's like, that's kind of like the big point of the movie. So, like, and this is a producer in Hollywood. Like, I'm just like, what?
Oh yeah, it's amazing to me. The thing I learned in editorial when you're cutting movies together, everybody's like, oh, can I see a cut of it? And I'm like, I don't like to show things to anybody before. Oh, I work in the industry, I get it. And they're the first people to be like, well, you're going to fix this when you're done, right? Yes, we're going to fix it when we're done. and it's like, of course we are. How do you tell me you work in the industry, and it's like when if someone's cell phone doesn't ring in a cut that somebody's watching, and they answer the phone and they say hello, somebody will inevitably say, well, you're going to put a cell phone ring there, right? And you're like, yes, we just forgot to put it in for the screening. There was no cell phone there. It's a post-production thing that we're going to add. Don't worry. It'll be there. But the fact that every single time you show an unfinished film to somebody, they always make these comments as if you hadn't noticed that.
Don't forget.
Yeah, like I didn't know that cell phone didn't ring. Oh my God, that's a shocking revelation. I
always just go with my default response is, man, when you guys are finished post, this is going to be an amazing film. That's all I have to say, because I know they're going to catch this stuff.
That's
cool.
What you do. There you go.
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Go ahead, finish. I was just going to get into the next super chat, but if you got something more to say about it.
No, it's just a funny thing that in post production, everybody thinks they know things, and then they come in and they make those kinds of comments. It's hilarious.
But yet, so
the worst is when you hear it from the director of the movie when you're in the first screening.
Yes.
I've been
Adam
Wolford. It's not great.
Oh, jeez. Adam Wolford sends in $5. Says, I think if you bring someone from 300 today and let them see how the world has changed and let them lose it. Like somebody from way back, oh yeah. Well, I mean, and that's just
plus someone out of time and bring them to today, they're going to be shocked. I mean, the only thing they'll probably recognize is maybe the sky if you're on a field somewhere. But outside of that, it's very, very.
And then I wonder if they'll start choking from the air first.
Right. I mean, you bring somebody from, say, 500 years ago and take them onto the LA freeway system. Like, get them in a car, even as a passenger. Here we go. Can you imagine? I mean, you're seeing things that you haven't even, and in a way, it was kind of like, it's kind of like watching Star Wars for the first time. Because even when I was a kid, I saw Star Wars opening weekend, and there had never been. I try and explain this to people. There had never been a movie that looked or felt like Star Wars before. And it's not just the opening shot with a blockade runner and the Star Destroyer, but it was everything. The robots, the fact that it was shot outside, on and you had the sand crawler, and you're looking at the robots that have been brought by the Jawas to be sold. I mean, everything, the fact that you had this sort of a lot of verisimilitude, but it was this realistic space fantasy. There was nothing before in Hollywood that looked anything like Star Wars, that was trying to achieve this realistic feel. And so watching it for the first time, it really changed your imagination in terms of what you could expect to see in a movie. And from then on, from 77 on, this was true of genre filmmaking. Alien did the same thing. The depiction of LV-426, the Nostromo, the refinery, the way that you had these sort of blue collar characters working in outer space. These basically they're glorified oil workers and truck drivers. So you were seeing these things that no one had ever seen before. And as a kid growing up, it was like, wow. And that's what really would get you. I mean, things like that are few and far between, because now we've seen everything. I mean, occasionally you'll see photorealistic dinosaurs like in the first Jurassic Park, or you'll see like The Matrix, where bullet time or something was something we'd never seen before. But back in when Star Wars came out, the effects technology, there was nothing even remotely similar. And people say like, well, 2001's depiction of spaceflight, which was true. The effects were very, very good then, but they weren't used in the same way. And it was still based in our normal technology. But with Star Wars, it was completely different. It changed everything. And that's why it's so disheartening now that we just see the same variations on the theme that we got 43 years ago when Star Wars came out. You're just seeing the same stuff, the same aliens. It's just all the same.
It's the exact opposite intention of what Lucas was hoping to get out of Star Wars.
Yeah.
He's hoping to experiment and open up the world for experimentation, and it just kind of stalled.
The other thing too is that Star Wars was a very lived-in world too.
Yeah.
I mean, until then, if you saw things like Logan's Run, where everything was very sterile, everything was very clean, everything was right, sharply cut right angles. But Star Wars, if things were dirty, they had sand on them. The stormtroopers, the armor was looked like it'd been run through the ringer. This is a world that you felt that could exist and that you were peering into through this window of a movie screen.
Yeah, and the thing about that was, it was every aspect of the world. It wasn't just some of it. They weathered everything. They made everything look lived in and used. And they would just put things like the moisture evaporators. I mean, we all know that the evaporators that were at the Lars, Owen, and Amperu, they're what those look like. Now, you didn't exactly. Well, how does a moisture evaporator work? You're harvesting moisture because it's a desert environment. But even those iconic images of those things, Luke's land speeder, all of that suddenly. It seemed right. It seemed like, oh, in this universe, all of this stuff, like you said, Rob, looks real, but it also, the design of it all, like, who would have ever thought that Millennium Falcon or TIE fighters would have ever existed? They didn't look like rocket ships or anything we'd seen before. It was all so new. Why is the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon over off to one side? Why isn't it in the center of the ship? There was all these different things, and it was also like everything about it all worked together. And like you said, that's a great way of looking at it. We're peering into the window of a universe, of a world that looks real. Mm-hmm. It feels real, but we've just never seen anything like it before.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could define it as it's the jalopy universe, because everything's like lived in, worked in, broken down, patched together.
Right.
It just has its own life to it.
And going back to what, you guys were just saying, like, that was the one thing that Lucas complained about the new films was, well, they just wanted to make a retro film. You know, at least with every one of my movies, I tried to bring something new, which he did. I mean, even if you don't like the prequels, objectively or subjectively, however you want to put it, they still have elements to them. Like, you know, he was pushing digital media. He pushed us into the age of digital filming instead of using film now. It's because of him making that big leap back then. I mean, there was so much he was doing just in those 3 films that got us to where we are now today in filmmaking, even farther than he did in the first 20 years before that. So, yeah, I mean, he's very overlooked in the history of film as far as that goes, not just by the movies he made, but just the technology behind them.
Yeah, I mean, also, look, I think the prequels are not good movies, but they're pretty interesting Star Wars. Like if you go back and see what he was doing, and I just don't think they're very well told stories, but all the individual elements are pretty interesting. Like I love the idea that you on Naboo, you've got the Gungans and their underwater civilization, and then you've got Queen Amidala and her people, that they have this sort of, you know, Obi-Wan's like, you're in a symbiotic relationship on this planet. Surely you have to understand that. You know, what happens to one of you happens to both of you, your civilizations. And there's a lot of really good stuff in those movies. They're just not it's not well told.
Robert, I don't know if you've met Tom Conkle or not yet, but he's been a frequent panelist here on the channel. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me on. You know, Robert, I'm a big fan. I've been watching your channel for years.
Oh, well, thank you. I see you seem really familiar to me too.
I've been around probably in the same circles. I have a production company here in LA, and I've been joining them in a couple of discussions. And I'm a big genre guy, big Star Wars, Star Trek guy. I'm kind of like you. I remember seeing Star Wars for the first time, and literally on the drive home, I told my parents I was leaving home, and they said, "What are you going to do with us?" And I said, "I'm putting you in a home. You know, whatever I need to do." So, and I did it. The day after I graduated, I packed my car. I drove for 4 days straight, and I lived in my car in LA until I got an apartment. And then I started a production company, and I've been very lucky that my day job is actually doing this. You know, as a writer or performer or whatever, I've somehow managed to leverage it. But I loved the discussion you're having, because one thing that script and you were talking about is how many times too a film is made. Like the visualization of that film, it's first made as a script, it's first made in the shooting where you come up with a look, and then frankly a movie's made again in post. You know, Star Wars was made in post.
Oh yeah.
It was completely reconfigured. So you have 3 opportunities to really create something. And this discussion is terrific, because the idea that there's less innovation now is much less that there aren't a richness of ideas, but that when you're given a brief or you're given a time that you want to film, like we're looking at March 18th, that is the antithesis of creativity. It's like you don't go, I have something that I want out on Monday. What can we fit into that slot? But rather, I have this amazing thing I want to do, and I hope I can do it by Monday. But if I don't, I'll do it on Tuesday. And it's a mode of thinking we've gotten into where, as I've seen it, you know, when a phone company owns a movie studio, they're going to try and quantify art. And the audience here, you know, the Midnight Edge audience knows that you cannot quantify art. There is something magical about when it works. You were bringing up Alien as an example, or Star Wars. The reason those are good is the courage of the conviction of the people that were making it. They brought in a team of people that created everything from soup to nuts. It was the look. It was the sound design. It was a movie they actually wanted to see, that they actually wanted to make. And now when I'm on sets or when I'm pitching my things, I often feel like I'm the only one who cares whether this is good or not, or who believes in what it's doing, because you're servicing a brief at this point. And it's the struggle between people that love to make stories versus people that love money. And there used to be an interface. There used to be less of a distance I would have to go to educate the people that would take a chance on you. The Alan Ladd Juniors of the world are a lot harder to get to now, where you're like, look, I got a crazy idea. I want to do this thing. And they go, you know what? I'm investing in you. I'm not even investing in the idea. I believe you can do this idea. The idea of that spirit is so much harder to find now, which is ironic because it's so much easier to make a movie with the equipment, but so much harder to push it through the system and have it emerge as an original thing on the other end. All the original stuff it's basically, you're looking for nat shit and pepper. You're
Yeah.
sifting through all of it, and you're lucky to find it. If something escapes that's original and great, it's a miracle.
Well, you know, I had the Pierce brothers, Brett Pierce and Drew Pierce, who made a movie called The Wretched. It's a witch film, low budget witch movie, and it gained notoriety because it was the #1 movie at the drive-ins here during the summer during COVID time, 5 weeks in a row, and they made the movie exactly the way that they wanted to make it. You know, it was a low budget film. But I thought, I watched it and I really liked it. I'm like, this felt to me like watching Phantasm for the first time. You know, Don Coscarelli spent 3 years making Phantasm, and I really, really enjoyed the film. And one of the things that I got from The Wretched when I was watching it was the guys who made this movie loved what they were doing. You know, it was not, nobody was hired to, it wasn't a hired crew. I mean, these guys, they originated it, they wrote it, they conceived it, and yeah, it was a low budget movie, but it had verve and it had verve, wit, and moxie, and I just really enjoyed watching it. And I've missed that. You know, I've missed like even on our channel, my girlfriend and I, we do whining about movies, and we've been doing horror films. And even going back, we watched the original Friday the 13th, the movie I've seen like 100 times, and I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I was going in and looking at the special features and how Victor Miller, the writer of the film, was told by Sean Cunningham, he said, look, we're going to rip off Halloween. And the writer hadn't seen Halloween. And Victor Miller's like, okay. And so he watched Halloween, and he came up with, he's like, okay, so we have to separate these kids and get them into a situation where they're away from any adults. And then we have to, because of something that happened, there's a evil that comes from the past that's going to stalk them all, and they they have sex, you know. And he figured out what it all.
Yeah, and then he took Psycho and reversed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just funny because when you watch the original Friday the 13th, the people making it knew exactly what they were making. You know, it's not a movie that reaches, it doesn't overreach, or it doesn't, what it was specifically set out to do, they did exactly that. And that's I think that's something that we don't have much anymore of, because every film project is now seen as a financial, it's a financial transaction. Like, we're going to make,
it's a huge risk, which is the antithesis of chance taking and quality and creativity. You can make something great. I've seen great mass-produced, well-machined films. I'm still a fan of a lot of them, but you're right. That scrappy little kind of under the radar film that gets made is ironically more and more rare in a time when you've got more content than ever, but most of it is either gasping to be seen, or it's copies of copies of copies where there's no innovation. It's just, well, we're making a movie because we think somebody else would like it. We don't like it, but I believe we workshopped it, and I think this will be good. And it's frustrating for somebody that has an original project, as you know.
Oh, well, you know what I'm doing right now is there's a film I've wanted to make literally for 30 years based on a book, and I have a really good script for it. But what I'm doing is I'm storyboarding the movie. I'm storyboarding the first 30 minutes, but I'm storyboarding it in such a way that I'm cutting it all together into a story reel. So I'm literally, you can sit down, and even though it's still images, but you can watch how I would shoot it. And I'm mixing the sound, and I'm going to do a 5.1 stereo mix.
That's great. So it's like full animatic sort of.
It's well, you know, animatics actually, you know, move with it. These are just, it's like an old, before they could do animatics so quick easily, but the cast, there's 3 principal cast members I want to be in the movie. So I've had the artist who's doing these storyboards draw the cast in as themselves, as if they're starring in this movie.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I've been working with, he's a Canadian artist too, and like he'll send me and the way I do it is I steal a bunch of other shots from movies, and I'm like, okay, here's the angles I want to use, and then he'll and then I cut it together and give him the story reel up to that point. I have to keep adding more to it. And then he draws the characters, and then he comes up with interesting spins on whatever my angles are, because I can't find the exact angle, but I've given him the script pages and he knows where it's going. And I'm hoping that you'll watch this and be like, okay, the script is good. It speaks for itself, but now you can watch what my vision is for it. So I'm trying to make somebody, instead of making a lookbook, so people would look at this and go, oh, I want to see this. I want to see this with these 3 actors. And it's been fun. If nothing else, it's been really fun to do, because as I'm pulling shots, I just zip through the internet and find shots I want. It's just fun to do it, and it's helping me reconceive how to tell the story anyway.
Yeah,
and
no, that's terrific. It's like a sizzle reel, but with the actual integration of the people that you want to be in the film. So it's as concrete as you can get without shooting the film.
Absolutely. I mean, and even I marvel at it when I watch what I've only got like the first 6 minutes done, but I look at it and go, this is good. I want to see this. Even though, but nowadays
that reminds me of the old Marvel cartoons of like Captain America and the Hulk. They were done that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's, and this way and the artist has this really great, he uses Photoshop effects to create lighting and stuff. And then what I'll do is I'll put moves and things on the actual artwork. So like he'll give me something, for instance, there's a scene where one of the characters walks out on a stage, and he gave me 2 pieces of art. He gave me the character standing on the curtains open. He walks out on the stage, and then a spotlight hits him. So he gave me the same image, one that's drawn without the spotlight coming down and the other that's with the spotlight coming down. So when I put a dissolve between the 2 pieces of art, it looks like even though it's drawn art, it looks like a spotlight hits him. And then I put in a sound effect of like a spotlight. You hear the click of a spotlight snapping on. So you look at it, and it looks like, even though it's static artwork, it's like somebody turned the lights on, and it's really cool. And I'm hoping that I'm hoping that it'll because that's what they did. Pixar, before they had programs where they could do animatics so easily, they would make story reels, and you'd watch these story reels and see what jokes worked and what didn't, because you can hear the performances. You have actors reading the lines, and you can see the scenes. And nowadays, you everybody wants to say no, but everybody also wants to see a lookbook. Nobody wants to read. They don't care about your script. They'll look at your lookbook and go, "This lookbook looks cool." For those of you who don't know, a lookbook is like, if you want to direct a project or you're trying to get money for a project, you literally make a book or a PowerPoint presentation that has all of the kinds of images that you grab from all over the place, whether it's other movies or National Geographic, or you actually go out and take pictures. Like you find an old house that you want to shoot at, you have to show people what the movie's going to feel like by showing them the pictures, right, giving them a sense of what the finished film will look like. And nowadays, that's all anybody. There you go.
Yeah, we actually have. I mean, I'm not going to play the sound so we can talk, but yeah, we actually did a 5.1 mix for this one too. Actually,
oh, that's great.
Funnily enough, Robert. But yeah, it's just just like kind of subtly animated, but yeah,
you're communicating in a visual medium. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's exactly right.
And this is the way you convince someone to visualize, the flow of your film, what the look of your film is going to be, the various angles and the sort of tone. Because for me, tone's everything. When you're doing a pitch, the first thing you tell them is the genre. It's a comedy or it's this or that. But the second thing is you want to establish tone. And I find that, now we have better tools to be able to do lookbooks or animatics or whatever. There's really no excuse for articulating your idea visually as much as you can.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, yes, this is great.
Yeah, it gives me a complete feel.
This is really good. Yeah.
When did you do this?
We had some guys do this a couple of years back now.
Okay.
I helped them rewrite the script like 2 years ago. Yeah, so like 2 years ago. And then we had some guys put you did one of the voices for this, Rob.
Yeah, I remember. It was like the nervous like deputy or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I'm doing. This is even more advanced because you've got movement.
Yeah, I can't remember how much my writing partner paid for it, but yeah, it was kind of
Yeah, it's
cool.
like a motion graphic
Yeah.
novel.
Yeah. And then I
That's
did the
fantastic.
5.1 mix for it. I edited it all together, and yeah, it was kind of cool. Trenchman sends in $1.99, says, F humanity, I want to go back to being a monkey. I hear you. That was from when we were talking about earlier with all the craziness. Then we also got a super sticker from Mr. Tinkle Trunk. He sent us a one-up hippo, so thank you so much. I don't know how much time both you guys still have. I don't want to hang on to you too much longer. I know, Robert, you probably got to get moving here pretty soon, but this has been an amazing conversation, and I want to get you two together again sometime because I'm sure you guys could talk all kinds of movie stuff all day long.
I would love to. I'd love to talk further with you, Robert, as well.
Yeah, I would love to do that as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
for 100%. And I guess the presidential debate's on, so we got to go watch
Yeah,
that.
that's kind of where I was like, we're losing a bit of our audience here, so I didn't know. I know you're busy too, Robert and Tom.
Yeah.
Everybody's slowing down for the ambulance.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could probably wrap it up here soon, but no, I really want to thank you guys for hopping in here. We must do this again because I love hearing all the stories, and of course, like I said, every time I talk to Robert, he always tells me something else from his past. I'm waiting till the time he's like, yeah, then there was the time I was hanging out with Orson Welles. And
Never met Orson Welles.
I know. I'm just saying. I had to think of something that I know you wouldn't have done already, because then you're going to be like, well, I actually have, hung out with so and so. Like I'd say, somebody. But Tom, looks like you're having some issues with your internet in here anyway.
Yeah,
so.
it keeps kicking in and out on me. I'm not sure why.
Well, if are you out in the west there, right? So like, are they doing that whole blackout thing like they were talking they were going to do, or what's going on?
You know what? I think there is some certain areas they might be doing some kind of throttling on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I heard something about that on the news, so I wasn't sure.
I was uploading a bunch of audio thing. I did a production of Dracula as a radio show, and I'm uploading all the audio files from it. And it was a lot of fun. It's actually an adaptation of the Mercury Theater version of Dracula.
So speaking of Orson Welles.
Speaking of Orson Welles, yeah. I do a pretty good
This is Orson Welles.
Yes, this is Orson Welles. So, it was a lot of fun doing it, and
There's
I think
peas and everything.
Yeah, Wells was a big influence when I did my film noir feature. That he was definitely in my head the whole time.
All right. Well, definitely check out the Burnett work if you haven't already. Of course, check out Robert's YouTube channel as well. Tom also has a YouTube channel. I'll try and get those links in the description for everybody. Script, check out his channel. And anybody else got anything they want to plug before we go? Or
if any of you filmmakers want, up until December 1st,
right.
we're having the first Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival on my channel. I got a couple more films today. And I think as they move along, they'll get even more interesting. So if you've ever wanted to make a film, you've got a venue to show it. And all you have to do is have it done by December 1st. So good luck.
Oh, that's terrific. And the two things I would love to plug, Trouble is My Business is my 1940s feature film. You can find Trouble is My Business on pretty much all of your platforms. And it's even on this old-timey thing called DVD and Blu-ray.
Right.
And then on the 29th of October, Noise in the Middle, which is a psychological thriller. Which I have the part of the poster is visible in my avatar there is dropping as well. It comes out on the it's going to premiere on the Kings of Horror channel here on YouTube and then be on all the platforms in December.
There you go.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, of course, anytime, you know that. And of course, same thing goes for Robert too. Like anytime you guys are available. And if you want another good reason to go out there and support physical media right now, I need to remind everybody, Back to the Future's on 4K Blu-ray now.
Yes.
I know.
Near perfect film.
I got my box set with the floating hoverboard.
Mine's still on its way. How is it? Is it cool?
I haven't cracked it open yet. I literally got that, and I got the steelbook for Satoshi Kon's series Paranoia Agent.
Ooh.
I got those two things in the mail yesterday.
Yeah.
So.
And Matt G sent us a super sticker. I don't have my thing up anymore, so I can't see what it is.
Thank
you.
It's
cake. Oh, cool. Well, thank you for that. And I didn't get the steelbook for Back to the Future. I got the one with the hoverboard like you did, Robert, but I immediately ordered a bunch of blank 4K cases because like I did for the last 2 Back to the Future box sets, I'll just make my own covers for them because I fucking hate, and I'm going to do the same thing for the Hitchcock set we were just talking about too. So I ordered like a 10-pack so I have enough cases for all of them. I'm just going to make my own. I hate them being in those books because they scratch the discs. I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all right, I
Thank
want
you
to
guys. It was a pleasure.
yeah. I want to thank everybody for being here. I think we earned a maximum effort puppy tonight.
Yeah, after starting with that minimum effort, we kind of really blew up.
Yeah, you guys really you were well, not you and Rob, but Robert came in and helped, and so did Tom at the end there, making it quite a show. So thanks again, guys. As always,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Just when you think this show is